For those of you who say that wargaming never listens to player feedback, let me quote you this part of the Ministry of Balance article for the October 2024 update. Quote, US hybrid battleships proved more survivable than intended and were problematic, according to your feedback. While we aren't increasing the size of their citadels, this HP reduction will make them more vulnerable to all types of damage. And then it goes to say that the Connecticut, Nebraska, and Delaware all had their HP reduced. On the other hand, USS Louisiana at Legendary tier was never touched, and I think that's because its citadel is a little bit more accessible than the rest of them. At least it's going to be easier to hit. However, if any of them needed a nerf of some kind, I would think it would be this one because it's pretty cracked. And we're going to see that in this battle. Taking the initial shot there at the Des Moines, you see I thought he was going to complete that turn and go behind the island, but he doesn't. He straightens out, and instead he's going to beach himself, so we can just go after him with the airstrike torpedoes. But anyway, Louisiana wasn't nerfed, its HP wasn't reduced, so I took the liberty of putting the Takanashi Hoshino commander at the helm. She, of course, comes with the Megalomania skill, which reduces the main battery reload time, reduces the time for the battleship's concealment to go back down to normal, and decreases the HP. So we've got 91,480 HP. You could look at that as a little bit of a nerf, I suppose. And really, the rest of the battleships didn't get nerfed all that much, like Delaware, for example. Its HP was 80,800. It was nerfed to 75,100, about 5,000 HP or so. I don't think that's quite enough to move the needle. If those ships really were to be nerfed, then I think their citadels need to be raised out of the water and become hittable. I think probably the reason that they aren't, from a balancing standpoint, if we wanted to sort of steelman Wargaming's case for the way that they decided to design these ships, it would probably be something to do with the flight deck. Of course, the Louisiana, as you can see, and the rest of them all have this very hideous flight deck sort of in the center of the ship, and the armor on the deck itself is pretty thick. I can't remember the exact value, but there might be some instances in this battle where some ships with larger guns hit that deck armor from far away and their shells bounce. However, the side plating on these flight decks is about 19 millimeters, and so it is able to be penetrated by practically everything. And if a big old battleship salvo comes in and hits you in the right place on that flight deck, it's going to do a lot of damage. So maybe Wargaming figures it already has that vulnerability. We don't really need to have the citadel above the water line. But at the same time, yes, it has that vulnerability. It also has these airstrike planes that you can drop from the sky. And that's pretty potent. These things are very powerful, and they're especially good at punishing ships that are stationary. That's one thing I always like to tell people about this game, is that there's an ebb and flow to it. There's a time to push in, there's a time to retreat, reposition, and then push back in. You can see we've kind of been doing that for the majority of this battle. We certainly aren't going to push straight into this flank because there's a DD somewhere in that cap, and we already took a couple torpedoes from him. We don't need to take any more. But one thing I think you always want to do in a battleship, or really any class of surface ship in this game, is you want to preserve your ability to maneuver. Being able to maneuver makes you more survivable for all kinds of reasons. Dodging torpedoes, being able to quickly get into an appropriate angle and then get out of it, being able to retreat when you're being focused by a superior number of enemy ships, reposition, and then try to get a different angle on them. You want to preserve the maneuverability at all times. Now, sometimes in cruisers, you can, for example, do what the Des Moines is doing. He's posted up by that island, he's sort of stationary, he's reversing and going forward to avoid shots, but we have these torpedoes that can come out of the sky and can hit him from the broadside. They end up taking him out for our first kill of the game. That is the great strength, I think, of these hybrid battleships. Those torpedo bombers are very good at punishing people who are stationary or just otherwise not moving very much. And you don't move very much if you park somewhere and then you reverse. It's You might as well be sitting completely still. It's not any kind of valuable maneuverability that you're doing. You're essentially a stationary target for things like HE spam, battleships to just shoot you with their AP, and now these torpedo bombers. So, if anything needed to be nerfed on this ship or the rest of them, it would probably be the efficacy of these torpedo bombers. I think we've already had a salvo that hit for more than 20k. We're going to get another one before this game is over, and as you can see, it is turning into a little bit of a blowout. Normally, I don't like to show these on YouTube, but for about the past week, these were the kind of matches that I had. And so, gotta show them, or there'd be nothing to show. The blue team is now taking the alpha cap. The enemy team does have the 2 red caps. This is a phenomenon that I think happens quite a bit in this game. It seems to me that the enemy team aggressively pushed to secure both the Charlie and Bravo caps, and to some degree, if you push too much early on in the game in hopes of securing the caps, and then you lose all of your ships in the process, you can find yourself in a scenario like the red team currently is. And speaking of being stationary and reversing, here's the Delaware, one of the hybrid battleships that did actually receive a nerf, but only to the HP, only a 5,000 HP nerf, and I think even if it hadn't been nerfed, the same thing probably would have happened there. The Delaware goes down, mostly thanks to the fact that he was broadside to the battleship next to me, and he was able to get a good hit with the main battery. The torpedoes there really just finish him off. But we've also got Yamato, who's doing the same thing, this same sort of bow tank reverse strategy. It's not good even in matches where these hybrid battleships are not present. You can see the steady golden stream of HE spam, courtesy, I think, of the friendly destroyer near us. I'm not sure exactly what destroyer that is. Obviously a pretty good gunboat. And he's just spamming the Yamato. You see, there's no chance that any of his shells are going to be thrown off by the Yamato's speed or maneuverability. The Yamato is simply reversing. And it's not a great thing. He's gonna be melted by this HE spam, and we can continue to sort of just comfortably push into him. Sure, he can overmatch the bow, he can probably get chunky hits on us as we push in, but it's not gonna matter. We have enough HP to deal with it. We've actually switched to the HE too. I was hoping to maybe get a fire here in addition to whatever fires the friendly DD, or maybe that is a cruiser, I don't know. Whatever this thing is that's farming the Yamato, if he's going to set a fire, I wanted to add to that. And I was thinking, well, we could use the torpedo bombers against him. But you see there, we get the fisting medal because he gets taken down by whatever's spamming that golden shower of HE at him. That just leaves this last enemy Yamato, who is also, like the 2 battleships before him, sitting still, bow tanking, and reversing. And there's a hit with all 6 of the torpedoes, which is, I don't know what that was, 20, 30,000 damage. We get the high caliber medal. We're up to 172,000, maybe 177 after that salvo. If anything needed to be nerfed on these hybrids, it's probably the efficacy of those torpedoes. They are very, very strong when you can hit them all on a single target, especially if that target would be something like a cruiser. These things could be absolutely lethal. The way to avoid them, of course, is to not be sitting completely still. And again, if you're reversing, you're basically completely still. What you want to do is be maneuvering and make it difficult. You want to be turning and stuff. And then it's a lot harder to land these torpedoes on a moving target like that, or at least to land every single one of them. And individually, they don't do all that much damage. This game ends with us hunting down the Z-44. He gets taken out by our teammates, and of course, we are victorious. In any case, I think there's still work to be done on these hybrid battleships, and that work probably has nothing to do with their HP. I think for the lower tier ones, either raise the Citadel, but in all cases, maybe somehow we have to tune down the damage or something on these airstrike planes, because they are very potent. And that's basically the reason the Louisiana in particular is so cracked. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.